There is a great lie that modern society, from New York to London, from Seoul to Tokyo, still whispers in your ear every morning when you wake up. It sounds soothing. Study hard, work diligently, and save every single penny. And then you will have everything: a house, a car, a prosperous life. That was the social contract of the 20th century. A promise of upward mobility based on merit. But do you feel something? A feeling like you're running on a treadmill whose speed keeps increasing exponentially. While your legs can only move in arithmetic progression, you run faster, you work longer hours. But the finish line, real asset ownership, keeps drifting farther away. That's not a feeling. That's mathematics. Welcome to Inner Shadow, where you'll hear truths society doesn't want you to know. When assets outrun labor and the silent decay of the middle class. When Thomas Piketty put forward the thesis, R greater than G, meaning returns on capital grow faster than income from labor, he wasn't merely describing an economic phenomenon. He was pointing to a profound shift in the structure of society. When asset owners accumulate rapidly, people who rely only on wages cannot possibly keep up. The wealth gap doesn't just widen, it becomes a deep chasm that fundamentally separates classes. And the first victim is the middle class, the group that served as the stabilizing foundation of the 20th century and the early 21st. The core of the argument is this: if someone who works for a living can never catch up to the pace of rising asset prices, then effort, saving, and education gradually lose their power. A person can be hardworking, educated, capable, and still be unable to become the owner of their first home. When a new generation can't enter the cycle of asset ownership, the middle class is no longer reproduced, and society begins to split in two. This is visible with particular clarity in the United States. Here, labor income grows slowly, while stocks and real estate have surged across recent decades. Workers may have stable jobs, yet cannot accumulate enough initial capital. The path to the upper class increasingly depends on inheritance more than effort. The old middle class still exists, but a new middle class cannot form. South Korea is a special case in Asia. It is a country rich in skills, rich in knowledge, highly productive, and strongly educated. Yet housing prices in Seoul have pushed young people into a state that could be called academically elite, but trapped with no way out. A young family, even working diligently, can hardly hope to afford its first apartment. The Korean middle class is not collapsing because of unemployment or lost skills. It is collapsing because assets are rising far too fast relative to income. Piketty's thesis makes this stark. When assets move beyond the reach of workers, hard work and education alone are no longer social leverage. Viewed through these cases, Piketty's claim becomes concrete. Inequality today sits in asset ownership. When wealth is tied to starting position rather than diligent labor, society splits into two halves: one where assets keep generating returns with little or no work, and another that cannot enter that system, no matter how hard it tries. And when the middle class no longer has a path upward, trust and fairness evaporate, bringing political and social fragility in their wake. The disintegration of the middle class doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly. Each year, assets rise faster than wages. Each generation cannot buy a home and can only rent. Each young person realizes the race was over before they even reached the starting line. That is why Piketty is not merely talking about poverty. He is talking about a structural lockdown of society's future. When assets outrun labor, mobility between classes no longer exists. And when mobility disappears, the middle class disappears with it, leaving only the very rich and the very poor. This is not an economic incident. It is a change in the very nature of modern society, a deeply polarized society with a bottomless gulf no one can jump across. The time machine breaks when the past eats the future. To understand more precisely why you are exhausted yet still stuck in place, you must understand capitalism's time machine. In a healthy society, labor in the present and future must be worth as much as or more than capital, meaning accumulations from the past. Then a young person with nothing can still use youth and intelligence to surpass someone wealthy but lazy. That is the engine of development, and that is why the middle class exploded after World War II. But it seems we are living in a reversed era. Piketty's formula R greater than G means the rate of return on capital is consistently greater than the rate of economic growth and wage growth. Decode it in everyday language. Money produces money faster than people produce money. A pool of assets, real estate, stocks, bonds, can grow on its own at 5–7% per year, even higher during periods of monetary expansion. Meanwhile, your salary representing labor power may rise only 1–2%, or even stagnate once inflation is accounted for. This creates a brutal compound interest effect for those without assets. Imagine two race cars. The first car is assets. Its fuel is asset inflation, monetary easing by major central banks like the Fed or the ECB, and tax optimization mechanisms. It rockets forward. The second car is labor. It runs on sweat, tears, and a human's finite time, 24 hours a day, running barefoot. When asset prices rise faster than wages, the past accumulated capital dominates the present. Those who own the past, the wealthy, heirs pull further and further ahead of those who have only the present, wage earners. This is not a bug in the system. It is capitalism's default setting when there is no strong intervention. We are drifting back toward the world of Jane Austen or Balzac in the 19th century, where the only way to become rich was to be born into luxury or marry into inheritance, not to work yourself to death. The invisible wall and the evaporation of the American dream. Look at the United States, the cradle of the concept of the middle class. In the 1950s through the 1970s, an auto factory worker in Detroit could support a whole family, buy a suburban home, own 2 cars, and send children to college on a single income. That was an unusual period in history, when G greater than R income growth outpaced capital returns during post-war reconstruction. Today, that picture is a mirage. In major cities like New York, San Francisco, or Los Angeles, home prices have risen by hundreds of percent over the last 3 decades. While real wages for working people have largely stagnated, this creates an invisible wall. Those inside the wall, people who bought homes long ago, watch their wealth surge without needing to do anything. They simply sleep in their homes and wake up richer every day. The house makes money better than its owner does. Those outside the wall, the younger generation, new immigrants look in with despair. Even with a master's degree and 60-hour work weeks, they cannot save enough for the down payment because housing inflation runs faster than their savings rate. This mechanism is ruthless. It punishes those who only save and rewards those who hold assets. If you hold cash, the product of your labor, you are holding an ice cube melting under the sun of inflation. If you hold assets, the product of capital, you are holding a tree that draws water from that very puddle of melted ice in order to grow. In America, the divide is no longer about what job you do. It's about who your parents are. If your parents belong to the asset-owning class, you inherit a ticket to enter. If not, you are stuck outside, paying rent for life, a modern feudal tax paid to new landlords. Seoul's earthly hell when an apartment becomes a god. If the US is an example of slow erosion, South Korea is an extreme example, a harsh laboratory of Piketty's law. In Seoul, real estate is no longer simply a place to live. It is a religion, a measure of human worth, and the only ticket to be recognized as a first-class citizen. South Korea has one of the most elite workforces in the world. Hardworking, disciplined, highly educated. Yet the paradox is that this very excellence highlights labor's helplessness in the face of capital. An engineer at Samsung or a diligent civil servant can devote their entire youth to contribution, yet the price surge of an apartment in Gangnam or Mapo can swallow 10 to 20 years of their income in just a few housing waves. Why does Korea's middle class mourn in silence? Because they realize the rules have changed. The old formula was study well, get into a top university, join a major conglomerate, buy a home, become middle class. Now the formula is study well, still get into a top university, still work at a major conglomerate, but pay extortionate rent. Then watch prices rise. Then despair. Then stop marrying and stop having children. Dirt spoon and gold spoon aren't just internet slang. They are a bitter admission that class is determined from the moment you're still inside the shell. When assets rise too fast, labor becomes cheap. A person's value is no longer measured by what they contribute to society labor, but by what they hold assets. When a young person realizes working a lifetime is worth less than riding a condo wave for 2 years, the value system collapses. Why contribute? Why create? Society turns into a giant casino where everyone wants to speculate and no one wants to produce. The blood-sucking mechanism, asset inflation, and the Cantillon effect. Let's dig deeper into the hidden mechanism mentioned above. Why do assets surge so crazily? Is it because we lack land? Not exactly. The hidden culprit is the financialization of the economy and the Cantillon effect. In modern economies, especially in the West when crisis hits, the first response of governments and central banks is to inject money, also known as quantitative easing, QE. They print money to save the economy. But this money doesn't flow evenly into everyone's pockets. Where does new money flow first? Into the financial system, banks, investment funds, large corporations. These entities, the ones closest to the tap, use cheap money to buy back stocks, acquire real estate, and speculate financially. By the time money reaches workers through wages, it has already passed through many layers, and the prices of everything have already risen. That is the Cantillon effect. Those who receive money first, the financial elite, get richer through inflation. Those who receive it later, workers, become poorer because of inflation. Asset prices rise not because assets are better, but because money is worth less. A house in 1980 and a house in 2026 are still made of the same bricks, yet its nominal value may be 50 times higher. The homeowner did nothing to create that value. They simply rode the wave of currency debasement. Wages, by contrast, lag. They are hard to raise and rise slowly. The result is a massive wealth transfer from wage earners holding cash to asset owners holding assets. This is a legal robbery carried out in broad daylight. But because it happens through electronic screens and macroeconomic indicators, no one calls the police. The disappearance of the middle class, the hourglass society, the inevitable consequence of R greater than G is the disappearance of the middle class as a safe buffer. In the 20th century, society looked like a diamond. A small number very rich, a small number very poor, and most people stable in the middle. In the 21st century, society gradually shifts into an hourglass shape, also called the Babel model. At one pole are the ultra-rich, owners of capital, technology, and platforms. They live in a globalized world without borders. At the other pole are precarious service workers, people living day to day, without assets, without insurance, working for algorithms. In the middle, mid-level managers, civil servants, and small professionals are being crushed. Technology and AI replace their skills, while asset prices strip away their ability to accumulate. When the social elevator is cut off, class mobility stops. The child of the rich remains rich, the child of the poor remains poor. This is structural lockdown. A society without mobility is clinically dead, where hope is replaced by rage or resignation, such as China's lying flat trend or Japan's hikikomori. It is a silent cry for help from those who refuse to participate in a game they know they will lose. The nature of the game: are you prey or a chess player? So why does this system persist? Why do we still believe the illusion that wage labor will make you rich? Because the system needs fuel. For those massive asset piles to maintain their value, it needs millions of people working hard, taking on debt to buy homes, and consuming so businesses earn profits. Workers are both the batteries that generate wealth and the relief valve that consumes goods. Education, media, and mass culture are designed to train good workers, not good owners. School teaches you how to work, plainly speaking, how to work for someone else, how to follow discipline, how to trade time for money. No one teaches you about R greater than G, about debt cycles, or how to use financial leverage. They want you to keep running on the treadmill. Because if you stop, who will operate their empire? The truth is, you cannot overthrow this system. It is too large, too interconnected, and protected by the most powerful forces on earth: governments, banks, armies, laws, but you can hack it. You can find the loopholes and slip through. If the rule of the game is R greater than G, then the only survival strategy is, don't only labor become capital. And here are 3 core principles to reposition yourself on this ruthless chessboard. 1. Detox from income. Get addicted to assets. Most people are obsessed with salary. How do I raise my income? Is the wrong question. The right question is, how do I own a piece of the system? Income is linear. Assets are exponential. You cannot get rich by saving wages unless your wage is extremely high. You must convert labor into assets as early as possible. Even if it's just a small stock position, a very small plot of land on the outskirts, in the suburbs, out in the provinces, a small business, or intellectual property. Buy or build things that can appreciate while you are still asleep. The goal is not to work more, it is to own more. Remember, the rich don't work for money. They work to build money printing systems. 2. Understand the rules of money. In a world where money is constantly diluted, holding cash is suicide. You must learn the language of the elite. Inflation, interest rates, taxes, leverage. Don't see a house as a nest. See it as a leveraged investment portfolio. Don't see a job as a career. See it as cash flow that feeds investments. Financial illiteracy is the biggest shackle keeping the middle class in place. When you understand how money works, you stop chasing it and start getting ahead of it. 3. Escape the status race. The system keeps you trapped with the consumption snare. Buying a luxury car to keep up, going into debt for a lavish wedding, upgrading your phone every year. That's how you voluntarily put a yoke on your own neck. Those shiny things are designed to extract your surplus labor and move it back into the pockets of capitalist corporations. Practice financial stoicism. Live below your means. Use money to buy freedom, specifically time, not stuff. When you no longer need to impress anyone, you become dangerous to the system because you are no longer easy to manipulate. The disintegration of the middle class is not an accident. It is the logical result of a system that worships capital more than people. The wealth gap cannot be narrowed. It will widen into a canyon, and you are standing at its edge. You can choose to keep lamenting injustice, waiting for a political miracle that will never come, slowly sinking to the bottom. Or you can accept this harsh truth. Wipe your tears and start climbing with your own hands, not by blindly working harder, but by playing by the winner's rules. The world does not owe you fairness, but it gives you the right to choose your attitude in the face of it. Stop being a victim. Start being a player.